Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost podcast. Today, I have a guest who goes by the name David, and David is a seven-figure digital entrepreneur who has helped many businesses to scale their social media marketing systems. He has also coached over 1,000 students on lead generation and social media marketing. Today is such an honor and a pleasure to have him on the show with me as we discuss a very hot topic, digital entrepreneurship and creativity. Hi, David. I'm so excited to have you on. How are you doing?
Doing great, Daffy. Pleasure to be here. Really appreciate you making the time and having me as a guest.
Yeah. When I met you, you stood out to me as someone who has really been there and you've done that as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. There's something I help people also do to help them master the business of their creativity. And you stand out to me as someone who has also mastered the business of your creativity. Can you tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, growing up, I was, I guess, the cliche of entrepreneurs goes, everybody had a lemonade stand when they were a kid, but, that was very much me. I remember growing up in my neighborhood, a lot of kids had lemonade stands and we started them together. But, I guess I was always kind of the one that was there earliest and the last to leave, trying to, start, a business at sort of a young age. And, over the years, things changed, had bands, made music, was always sort of trying to build things and create things and, sort of take them out, to the market. And, eventually sort of ended up going the corporate route for a while, had, quite a bit of, professional success, as I was sort of building my professional career. But, if anybody who's listening along that has that entrepreneur bug would understand, there was always sort of that voice in the back of my head, always thinking of different ideas and trying things, many of which did not make me money, but lost me money as I dabbled and explored those entrepreneurial passions of mine. And eventually in 2016, ended up having the idea to start a social media marketing agency with my partner. And, the rest is really history. We've been doing that for the last 8 years now. And it's become something, much bigger than any of us ever planned when we left our jobs back in June of 2017.
Wow, I can tell it's always a very great experience, such that you even remember the date.
Oh, yes.
Remember the weather on that day. You remember everything about that day. That was the day you took that decision, and you look back to that day and you find that you're happy for it. You basically stand out as someone who has gone from idea to profitable creation. And that is the theme of this podcast, to help people ignite their creativity, innovation, and problem solving skills, and help them to go from idea, skill, talent, gift to profitable creations and tangible solutions. Many people are stuck in the phase of having great ideas, fantastic ideas. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to go about it. They are seeking validation. They are looking for third parties to endorse them, to permit them, to encourage them. These are some of the real challenges that creatives are facing. And when I meet someone who has successfully walked the walk and jumped over those hurdles, I'm super excited to engage them so that they can share some of their story and journey that can inspire someone out there to also ignite their creativity. So, David, do you want to tell me something about digital entrepreneurship and the opportunities that it provides for creatives in our present day?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I remember the first time that I really realized that, I guess, digital entrepreneurship was even an option. It was probably around the time that I was in university. So I'm gonna date myself a little bit here, but the iPhone came out towards the end of my freshman year in undergrad at ASU, and Facebook, the app, didn't even exist yet. But the sort of connected economy started becoming a bit of a thing. And I remember around that time, maybe a couple of years after that, I read as many digital entrepreneurs do, Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And, that really sort of fractured my understanding of the world and commerce and how money could be made as I sort of read, through those pages. And I don't think I was ready at the time, because I think a lot of people, read that and they think, hey, I'm going to, start a laptop business and I'm going to work 4 hours a week and it's going to be great. And, Tim himself has even come out and said, like, it's a really great title that sells a lot of books, but that wasn't really the spirit of the book. But in any case, that really sort of got my wheels turning on the possibility of, what was possible, using the power of the internet. And, that was really sort of my first exposure to digital entrepreneurship. And ever since then, it's been a nonstop, passion of mine, just constantly investigating, learning, different models. And for those, listening along, that maybe are in, as you mentioned, in that phase where they're maybe a little bit stuck, looking for opportunity, the internet has really just completely democratized what it takes to start a business online. Like if you look at my parents, right, or my dad or his dad, if they wanted to start a business, it was a potentially future compromising decision to start a business, just 20 years ago, right, where it was $500,000 to get a brick and mortar location, all the wares in the facility that would be required, plus a long-term lease and all of that. A lot of people needed to take collateral like against their homes or their mortgages in order to get approved to get those businesses started. Whereas now for $200, you can get an LLC, get a Google Workspace email address, and have a website up and running for whatever it is that you want to, sell online. So there's just never been a better time, in my opinion, to be an entrepreneur, where there's just so much possibility and there's really just nothing holding you back from going out there, starting to build an audience for yourself, even if you don't have the answers, just knocking on doors, making connections, and starting something online.
Wow. So how did that work out for you? You quit your job in 2017, I guess.
Yes.
And you started a business, a digital marketing business, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So what was the journey like for you, going from idea to not just solutions, not just creation, but profitable creations? Like, at what year did you become profitable? And did you ever feel like quitting? How did you overcome all of those hurdles?
Yeah, no, great questions. And I'm glad you asked that, because I feel like that's kind of the untold story about, a lot of entrepreneurship, because it hasn't always been, sunshine and daisies. So to give you the advent of the idea, like I said, I was working a professional job, had started kind of climbing the ranks of the corporate ladder. And I think that when you start a professional career, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of novelty. I worked for a really great company. I had great mentors during my time there. Like I'm very grateful for the time that I spent in corporate America and what I was able to take from that. But I remember very specifically, I actually had gone on a vacation with my now fiance, soon to be wife. And it was the first real break that I took from the corporate world, right? And this was around, I want to say September of 2016. And, the last day of the trip, I was really sad. And I couldn't put my finger on why. But she, kind of explored with me and asked, and I realized that I was dreading going back to work. And for a number of different reasons, pressure, expectations, all these things. And during that time, I realized, like, hey, I need to do something different than what I'm doing right now. And I had tried starting a couple businesses. The key thing was that they didn't make any money. So they quickly sort of burnt out. But those I look back on as well with a lot of appreciation, because those were lessons that I needed to learn, right? Like each business that I started before I started my agency, taught me things: how to build a website, how to do SEO, how to create a blog, like all these things that eventually would suit me in my social media agency journey. And long story short, came back from the trip and texted my now business partner, Derek, who I'd worked together with in the past. And I said, hey, like, I'm thinking of starting a business. At the time, it was a completely different idea, which I'll don't need to get into. But he said, hey, I also am pretty unhappy in my job. Let's chat. And he was working at a very large marketing agency for law firms, but he was on the sales side. And he said, hey, like our margins are crazy. I just realized, what if we offered this as a service to people, doing social media for them? I see how much these deals I'm closing are worth, and I see what it takes to deliver these services, and our margins seem to be pretty good. And, we both like social media. So what if we went ahead and went down that route? So without really knowing a lot about the industry, we decided to jump into it. And the big thing was that, again, I just lost a decent amount of money for me at the time on a couple of businesses that I'd started, and decided I wanted to do it for as cheaply as we possibly could, right? So couple $100, came up with a name, built the website, came up with a name, created a logo with Photoshop, and neither of us are designers, if that gives you any idea of what our first logo looked like, right? Built the website, came up with a name, created a proposal document, all these wares basically in one Saturday afternoon sprint. We just worked as hard as we could for like 8 hours straight, and then went out for beers and basically started the agency in a day. And because we had come from a sales background, we said, hey, look, let's just start, doing outreach to people, see who needs help with social media. And, we know enough that we're probably better at this than a lot of people that we could, get started with that are looking for help. And the real aha moment came where that first week we scheduled a meeting with somebody who said, like, hey, I really need help with this, right? And it was a screen printer, believe it or not, from Detroit. Never met her in person. And within 2 weeks of starting the business, we closed her for, pretty solid, multi-$1,000 retainer per month. And that was really all the incentive that we needed, right? Because we're like, okay, this is real. We just made a really solid amount of money, and we're able to keep all of that because we're used to being paid on commission. Now we're, making money as business owners, and we don't have a team yet, so there's no margin. It's all profit. And that was really the spark that we needed that sort of validated the idea. And we decided shortly thereafter to, basically set a quit date of 6 months later to sort of try and replace our income and see if we could, take it full time.
Wow, what a plan. That's exciting to hear and amazing to think about. So what do you have to say about the fact that we have lots of creatives now who have not really tapped into the digitization that has taken over the world in many facets? What do you have to say to these people who they still live in the brick and mortar world and not the click to other world? How can you help ignite these people? Is it possible? Is it possible to leverage the digital opportunities out there as a traditional business owner? What do you have to say to someone out there about this?
Yeah, great question. So specifically for creatives, I come from the creative space. My first exposure actually to marketing was with my now business partner, Derek. We played in bands together growing up, and being creative, being in a band, doing art. If you want it to live on its own, that's great. It's a passion project. You don't want it to turn into a business. That's fine. And creativity can live like that, and it can be that for you, and that's amazing. But a lot of people they maybe want it to be their full-time thing, right? And they want to be creative for a living. For us, when we were making music together, we were always trying to, take it to market. And that was actually my first exposure to Facebook ads, right? Was, hey, we could get people to listen to our music by, running ads on an ad platform. And that later became a skill set that benefited us when we started a social media marketing agency, right? And
Wow.
At the same time, I played in a band in college. And the thing that sort of frustrated me was, members of the band, weren't as passionate about getting the music heard. They wanted to be musicians full time, but there was sort of a disconnect between like what that would take and what I was willing to do from a marketing perspective to get it out there. And I eventually ended up leaving that band because I saw the opportunity and the potential, right? So if you're somebody who has an idea right now, you want to get it out there, the market 99% of the time is going to reward you a lot more for doing it on your own, especially if you're creative. I mean, look at graphic designers. they're some of the lowest paid people within organizations, even though they're the face of the brand, right? They create the brand, they create, all the communication that goes out and builds these companies. Whereas if you were to go and take those same graphic design skills that you have and start a clothing company, right? Like a good example of that is somebody I really admire a lot is this guy, George Heaton. He and his brother started a company called Represent. They're a clothing brand. But they went to school for graphic design and realized that, like, hey, we're really not going to make that much money doing this if we go and get a job for another brand. Let's start our own. Now they're one of the highest growth apparel brands in the UK right now. And they kind of came from that creative background, but decided that, hey, like, we've got these awesome skills. Let's start something of our own. And it took them a while to get there, but eventually people caught on. So that's the advice that I would give is there's just so much opportunity, channels, social media, everything available to you. There's nothing stopping you, right? Like, sort of getting long in the tooth of my response here, but it used to be that you'd have to go to record labels to get your music heard. You used to have to go to an art gallery to get your art on the walls, right? And now there's virtual art galleries that you can create, and millions of people out there, who might be interested in what you have if you just start sharing it and taking it to the market.
Wow, that's amazing. And to your point, there used to be a time when, before you could write your book, you needed validation from powerful people, from celebrities, from big churches or big organizations that had a mass of people that they could inspire to also jump into your book idea, so to say, and maybe support you or buy your book. But now the keys to the kingdom has been put in everyone's hands, with Amazon making every author, every person who has an idea, a book idea, Amazon has made them partners. You don't have to incur upfront cost before you can publish a book now. You don't need the permission of a record label before you can sing and get heard. You can just go on YouTube, you can go on TikTok. That was what Justin Bieber did, and look where he is today, right? And I feel like a lot of people have not yet tapped into this gold mine of opportunity that's out there. And one challenge that I've seen around that stops people is they say, oh, the internet is saturated, or maybe they try putting out a YouTube video and they got only 2 views or 10 views or less than 100 views, and there's the benchmark for 1,000 views or 1,000 subscribers rather. As of this recording, that benchmark before you can get monetized on YouTube is 1,000 subscribers. So we have people out there who are discouraged and like, maybe this internet thing is not for me. Maybe this digital space is not for me. Maybe I don't have what it takes, right? Because when I put up a video, nobody watches it. I don't get up to 100 views. I don't get 1,000 followers and whatnot. So what do you have to say about this? Is this something that should hold someone back? And if this is something that is an issue with someone listening to us right now, how can they work around it? Should they just keep at it and not look at those numbers? Some people call it vanity metrics, but some people think these things matter. So what do you have to say to all these different, mix that I've just brought out?
Amazing question. And as somebody who, as an example, built a YouTube channel, I can sort of talk from experience there about that journey. But I will say, so a couple things. Difficulty is always relative, but I do believe that in today's day and age, the gatekeepers have been brought down, right? Like, you no longer, as you mentioned, like it used to be that your career was up to somebody else deciding whether you or your art had worth, or your creativity, or your business idea, right? Like, somebody else would have to say, this music is good, I'm going to basically give you a loan to go and distribute this against your future records. Whereas today, you can just begin posting, and it is very discouraging when you first start posting and it's not being heard, right? And to kind of go to my YouTube example, Derek and I, we started a YouTube channel, and we were posting on that YouTube channel, and Derek was spending a lot of time editing videos that we thought were valuable, right? We were spending a lot of time and energy on it, and we were like, oh, there's so much information in this. Like, people are going to love this.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, and nobody saw it, right? And for 6 years,
Wow.
nobody saw it, right? It took us 6 years of posting fairly consistently, Dafi, to get to 2,000 subscribers, and then
Wow.
randomly in December of September of 2022, we made some changes and started, taking it more consistently, and basically said, like, let's be more consistent and sort of really go at this the way that we should have been this whole time. And, we were at a point where, we were getting, 2,000 subscribers a month. So very quickly, things can change. It's just a matter of, going out there. And I think too, it's about doing it for the right reasons. Like, the reason why we kept posting for 6 years was because we're like, hey, this is going to help people. Like, people need this information. We see people struggling. We can't help everyone one by one. We just don't have time, even though we'd love to. So YouTube is a better way of distributing this information. And we were passionate about getting it out there to people, even if we weren't getting a ton of views and a ton of return for the time that we were spending. But eventually that return did come. And I'm glad that we stayed consistent with it. Right. So if you're feeling discouraged, like, it can be very discouraging when it feels like, algorithms are working against you, and there's, powers that be, that are difficult to understand sometimes. And I think every creator or business owner or anybody who's, just trying to get their voice heard one way or another, or their ideas seen, or, their product into people's hands, whatever your passion is, it can be super discouraging. But what's the other option? Quitting? And entrepreneurs don't quit, right? So it's all about, being persistent and consistent. And, like I said, I had to take three major L's, before, I almost gave up entrepreneurship altogether, after those, where it wasn't until, I felt like I had the right idea again, and we validated that idea that, I really sort of had the fire back in the belly. But I mean, I was licking my wounds, right? Like, I was reeling. At the time, like I said, I lost thousands of dollars, which was a fortune to me, at that time. And, so if you're feeling discouraged, just know that really everybody felt that way. Justin Bieber felt that way, right? The first time Justin Bieber posted on YouTube, I don't know his whole story, but I don't think the first video he ever posted was the one that made him famous. There's probably a number of videos, over time that eventually sort of popped off.
Yeah, and for me, when I get those feelings, like, oh, just one person, just 10 people, or just 100 views, I tell myself this: if it was just one person on the other side of the Atlantic that got to see me, just because I posted, isn't it worth it? What would have been better? Sit down on my couch and do nothing about my ideas, and say nothing, and not work on it, and not publish it, not post it, not share it, not try to extend that hand of fellowship, that idea, share it with someone out there? Would it be better for me to just lock it within, bury it inside of me, or just share it so that at least there's a remote chance that at least one person can see it? And then I always tell myself, if it's just one person on the other side of the Atlantic that ends up seeing my video, or listening to me, or reading my book, or hearing my podcast, I think it's worth it. Because what would be the cost of going to the US, or going to Australia, or going to Belgium, or going to the over 50 something countries where my content has trickled into by virtue of me just doing what I do? What would be the cost of going to just one of those places to communicate my ideas, to share my thoughts, to sell my products, right? So that alone, for me, I find it valuable enough to hold on to, because I'm passionate about what I do, and I've seen the impact it has had on people, even within my circle, right? I was talking to someone, and the person told me he had an idea that he had buried, and just in the space of a 15-minute conversation, that person was ignited, and the person went on to work on that idea, and in 2 months he made $20,000.
Wow.
Publishing that idea that he had already given up on 3 years ago.
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
So I tell myself, if it's just one person that I can inspire on the other side of their devices, on the other side of the Atlantic, it's worth it. So I don't care. I don't care even if I post something and I just get one like, one view, no comment. As long as one person sees it, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, when you have that mindset, you become undeterred by those early, slow, numbers that you get. And like you said, 6 years, that's staying power, right? It builds something in you that has helped you stay the course now that you've arrived where you've arrived. Maybe if you had made it in your first video, you probably wouldn't have valued your success as much as you do now.
Very true.
But that experience has worked on you, and now it's working for you, right? So that's something that keeps me going as a digital entrepreneur myself, as an author, as a podcaster, as a YouTuber, as a social media evangelist, if you like to put it that way, as a public speaker, as a coach. If it's just one person that gets to see my posts, I think that's something valuable, because without these digital systems, I would be stuck in my home. I would need to take a plane and travel over the Atlantic to go and meet just that one person anyway. But with that one person comes the chance of being able to reach out to 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, and who knows? Maybe the next video I post is what will get me to 1 million views. So I don't care, and that's what keeps me going. And I'm just sharing that to inspire someone out there. You have a skill, you have a gift, you have a talent. You can digitize it and productize it and distribute it, because that's the power it gives you. It gives you the power of distribution, right? You no longer have to be limited by your locality, by your environment. And there are people also listening to me that do not have the benefit of family support, and I want you to speak to that, David. What was family support like for you? Because from your background, it looks like you had parents who had a traditional background. Was it easy for them to switch to the idea of you being an entrepreneur and you doing what you do now at that time?
Good, very, very good question. And it was absolutely not. It was kind of a classic, thing where, I do come from sort of a traditional professional family. My dad was in corporate America, for his entire career. There's other parts of my lineage where there is a little bit of, entrepreneurial, background, but I had really no sooner started kind of making a name for myself in corporate America, and sort of climbing the ranks, and I'd kind of gotten to a point where my parents were quite excited at the progress that I was making, right? Like I had kind of had a slow start out of college, where I had focused more on music, and creating, being creative, for a couple of years rather than jumping right into the corporate world. And then when I did that, I think that they sort of were quite relieved, where they're like, finally David's, like getting it together, and he's, putting the suit and tie on, right? And I think they saw me in a period of only a couple of years kind of play catch up, and then have opportunities given to me for as rewards for hard work within the company that I was working for, where I very, very quickly moved up to being like the youngest in the company in certain roles. And no sooner had I really achieved that I kind of had this feeling of this is it, and that's really when I started having those feelings again, where I was like, hey, this maybe isn't for me, right? But to them, I had no sooner kind of gotten to, kind of a great compensation package, and I should be very grateful for this role that I was in and the opportunities that I was being given. And then here I was, kind of giving them the news that I was planning on quitting my job, right? And I think that there was a lot of fear on their behalf at that time. And it was from a place of love, where I think that they, as many parents and people that maybe have not been an entrepreneur themselves, it seems like the scary thing to do, right? Where there's uncertainty, questions like, how are you going to have health insurance, and these types of things, when they want to make sure that I'm covered and I'm protected in case, something happens to me. so it was a lot of fear, and I remember specific conversations of them, advising me, against it, and are you sure? And kind of being grateful for where I was at. So, long answer to a short question, it was kind of a classic thing, and to sort of hit on that though, I've worked with 1,000 students now, helping them start agencies, and my story is not uncommon. And if you listen to a lot of podcasts from entrepreneurs, I was just listening to Sam Parr on the My First Million podcast last night, and he was talking about this exact conversation that he had with his parents, exact same conversation, right? And I was like, wow, like, that's good to hear, because I think parents, they want what's best for people. And I see, with a lot of our students, that sort of the same thing where they're like, hey, my parents, are saying like, I can't start a business, or I shouldn't start a business, and there's sort of a lot of fear around that and approval. And we want to make our parents proud. It's just built into us. But at the same time, like they don't know you like you know yourself. And if you believe in yourself and what's going to make you happy at the end of the day doesn't align with maybe that traditional path, you owe it to yourself to go and do something different. And believe it or not, at this point, I still don't think my parents really know what I do for work. And I've stopped seeking that approval a long time ago. They're very proud of me and everything that I do, of course. But they may never get it. And if you're listening to this and your parents are, maybe fearful, and maybe you're having similar conversations, you might find yourself in the same, situation where they may never understand how successful you can be and sort of what that can mean for your path in life.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your perspective to that. And I know we're saying, oh, quit your job, ignore your parents, ignore your friends, ignore your family. I think I kind of like David's approach to it, where he said, even when he was about making that decision with his partner, he tried to replace his income with his new business before he made the move. So he was very diplomatic in that decision. So there's definitely a place for being cautious. There's a place for being smart about it. But all that we are trying to just achieve here in our conversation is we don't want people burying their gifts and going to the grave with their gifts and ideas on the bedrock of, oh, this person didn't give me approval. Oh, this partner of mine, this spouse of mine didn't want me to go that way. When you know that you have something to offer that the world needs, you can be more, you want to be more, but you just don't know how, why, where, when to push out that brainchild of yours. Our job here is to inspire you enough to take that step when you need to, and ensure you don't go to the grave without birthing your brainchild. Now, David, this brings me to another point that I would like us to, touch on. What do you have to say about the profitability perspective? Because not everybody's story goes the way yours went, where in 6 months or 1 year you became really profitable and you got that first deal that really validated your idea. For some people, it may take them longer to even get that validation. Right? They may not even get the validation from within their locality, and they may need to go online also to get their validation. When I mean go online, like maybe the customers they need are not in their locality. Maybe the people that will value their ideas and will be willing to pay for it, will be willing to exchange some money for it, will not be around them. And so maybe there are people who are struggling in that area and they don't know how to make it profitable. So there are many broke creatives who have been broke. They've been creative for long, but they still broke for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. What do you have to say to these people? I believe, being the person that you are, who has worked with over 1,000 other people on this journey of yours, you may have a thing or two to say to that.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
The big thing that I see a lot, and that I've worked with people on is look at who is having success and try and shorten, if your goal is to make a profitable business, there's, unless you're doing something completely new, with like a completely new model of some kind, there's somebody out in the world who is having success with it. And I would suggest that you look at what they're doing and try and emulate that, right? Classic saying is, steal like an artist, right? Where look at what it is that they're doing, why it's making them successful, and then how you can make that, your own to take it to market in some way, or another. Like, the reason why we started our business model is because we saw that it was a proven model in some way. It was a highly competitive, highly saturated market, but we put our own, spin on it, made it our own, did our own thing, differentiated ourselves in it. But we very closely mapped to a proven method that we saw that was working. And for a long time, especially, back when I was in my music making days, I certainly let my ego get in the way, right? Where I was like, hey, we're writing this different type of music, and people should want to hear this different type of music. And because it's different, we shouldn't have to work as hard maybe as other people, or we shouldn't have to do like these traditional things. Like, we're going to be underground, right? Or we're going to be, alternative in some way, and we're above these things that other creators are doing. And meanwhile, we were scratching our heads as people that started after us found more success than we did in less time, and got all of the accolades and all the attention that we wanted, because they were doing what was working, right? And I think that it was a bit of an ego check when we started realizing those things. And the same thing goes for YouTube, right? Like, that was our creative outlet. We were posting videos online, and the end goal was to eventually make money with it. We wanted to sell, potentially courses or coaching, or, work directly with people. But we sort of failed to look at really what was working for videos that were doing well on YouTube and like model that. And it was only once we said, okay, how can we still continue delivering value to people in our way, while also like playing to the strengths of the platform, so that people actually start seeing what it is that we're putting out there. So those would just be, some quick tips, in terms of, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The most successful businesses in the world are not typically the ones that not always the ones, I should say, that do something first, but they're the ones that come along and, kind of see what's working, improve upon it, do it better, and end up having that success that they're looking for.
Wow, that's so amazing. You made mention of something that, sparked another thought in my mind when you talked about saturation. And this is another real problem that a lot of creatives could be facing, right? There's this concept of market saturation. For me, I think the concept of market saturation is a myth, but it is a real construct that's in the minds of people, that they feel like they're in a place where their ideas are already getting executed, or the things they want to do are already getting done for people at a bigger level, right? And even a better level compared to them who will be starting out as a beginner. And so they feel paralyzed, like, I don't want to go in there looking stupid, looking like a novice, looking like a rookie, when there's already tons of people out there killing it and crushing it. So how can you help people, or how do you help people, or what would you recommend or suggest to people in that bubble that would help them overcome that blocker?
Well, so there's what I think is a strong answer to that question. And the reason why markets are saturated is because those markets work, right? Like, people jump into markets and participate in those markets because people want to buy things in those markets, right? And again, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, like with the creativity, we were trying to do things differently, but it was an unproven, way of doing things, and it ended up, not working out. And we couldn't cut through the noise, right, in what we were trying to do. And I think that I completely agree with you. Like, saturation is a myth. This is something that I get questions from my students about all the time. Like, hey, we're thinking about starting an agency for this niche, right? We're thinking about working with gyms, and it seems like everybody's, a gym marketing agency. And it's like, while there might be a bit of truth to that, usually it's because you're in an echo chamber of people that are like you. And it seems like everybody is doing it because algorithms these days are trained to like show you more of what you like, right? So if you're following and engaging in a market, it's going to show you more and more of that market and other people, participating in that market. And it gets very easy to become overwhelmed and think that, everybody's, better than you. The other thing is play your game, right? Like, if you're a guitarist, you're not, and you're just starting out, like you're not Bon Jovi yet. So don't try to be Bon Jovi, right? Like be a small creator with 100 followers and be authentic in that and create for those 100 followers. And then as you get to 1,000, create for that 1,000 and then 100,000, right? And stay in your lane and play your game and do your thing. And I think that like the biggest thing that people are looking for these days is authenticity. And if you're authentic and you're yourself, and I think we all struggle with this. Like I'm guilty of comparing myself to others, perpetually. It's something I work on. But when you're authentic to yourself, there's no possible way that your specific market can be saturated because there's only one of you, right? There's only one zone of genius. There's only, one person that can put out exactly what you're going to put out, whatever that is, any business, art, music, design, creative channel, whatever it is that you do. If you are yourself, by nature of that, you're going to differentiate. And if you're consistent enough with it, eventually you're going to start getting attention.
Wow. So you basically told us we can actually create a market where we are in the category of one.
Yes.
And that's the zone every creative should aspire to be. So if you're not in the zone of one, it means that you're not doing it right. And that's where you also need to ignite your creativity and unlock your creativity so that you can figure out how you can stand out in that bubble called saturated market. What do you have to say about the concept of being an entrepreneur? The very definition of entrepreneurship is an adventure, right? An entrepreneur is someone that ventures into the journey of the unknown. And we live in the world where people really want to have a clear idea of where they're going before they even take a step. So how can we, survive as entrepreneurs in a world where we want a clear roadmap before we even take the first step?
Yeah. So I'd say a couple things, and there's a couple answers to that question. The first is, at a practical level, focus on the stuff that's in front of you first. Right. So I think that a lot of people, entrepreneurship is like climbing Mount Everest, right? Like when you're first getting started with it, you're standing at the bottom, you can't even see the top. And you're like, oh my gosh, if you've ever hiked any change in elevation, you're like, I'm going to be really tired by the time I get to the top of this mountain. And I don't know if I can do it. Right. And that is the reason why a lot of people stay stuck, right? They can't, they're looking at the end destination that they want to get to. And it seems so far away, and there's identity shifts that are going to take place. There's personality changes that are going to take place. Like there's priorities, there's all these things, and they're not ready for it, right? Whereas instead, if you were to say, hey, all I need to do this day is form an LLC, and I need to figure out how to form an LLC, and then I need to figure out what an LLC means, right? Or a sole proprietorship, or like, all I'm going to do is this. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a website or a name for my business. And then after I have a name, I'm going to set up my email, right? And this might take place over several weeks, depending on, how quickly you want to go at it and how much energy you have for it. But what you'll be doing is you'll be solving problems as you go through, and you'll be learning, right? And that is a very, very like micro example, but on a macro level, that is literally all that entrepreneurship is every single day of your life as an entrepreneur. It's just figuring out what the next day's challenges are, what comes at you, and then perpetually just problem solving. And there's never going to be, I've been at this for, a decade at this point. I can say that there are some days that like nothing happens, right? But more often than not, when you come into work for the day as an entrepreneur, there's going to be something unexpected. There's going to be things that you didn't anticipate. There's going to be wins. There's going to be losses. There's going to be good days, bad days. But it's all about just putting that next foot in front of the next foot on a daily basis versus saying, hey, I want to get to this level. And eventually you will get to that level. Like we've climbed the Mount Everest that we had in our heads as business owners. It took us 8 years to get here of just doing the thing each day.
Wow, that's amazing. I can go on and on. This has really been a very, very interesting conversation, very captivating. I want to appreciate you for all your wonderful insights. I'm curious, how can we get in touch with you? Those who are on the other side who maybe wanting to connect with you on another level, do you want to share how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah. I think in the show notes, there'll be a couple of links to socials and stuff. But I'd love anybody listening, find me on Instagram at David Schlais. It's SCHLAIS because my last name is tough to spell. I've also got a personal YouTube channel. You can just search my name on YouTube. Posting anything on there that I think will be actionable and helpful for people. With a focus on digital entrepreneurship and personal development. So would love to hear from you guys there, and don't feel afraid to reach out and send a DM. I try to get back to everybody that reaches out to me. So would love to connect with anybody that might have found value from this.
Wow, thank you so much, David. This has been a very explosive conversation, and I have you to thank for that. And to our audience, I want to say thank you for sticking around. Thank you for listening to this episode through to the end. I believe you found some value, and I want to encourage you to share this episode with a family, a friend, someone out there that you believe should take that leap, someone out there that you believe needs to ignite their creativity and be fired up to manifest their gifts, skills, and talents in the digital space. Thank you, and thank you once again. I'm going to see you on my next episode. And till then, all I got to say right now is have a good one, and bye-bye.